I was released from the hospital a day early, and when I came home, I saw my wife and her lover in our bed. I left without a word, blocked all the cards, and changed the locks. But then something happened that no one expected. Wife's 47 missed calls.
It was supposed to be a quiet return home, a day early, no fanfare, just the comfort of familiar walls and the woman he called his wife. But sometimes life doesn't wait for the curtain to rise before it reveals the truth. What Victor Dalton saw when he walked through that door didn't just end a chapter, it unraveled everything. And it all started with silence, a key that no longer fit. The nurse's smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she handed Victor Dalton the discharge papers. "You're good to go, Mr. Dalton. Doctor signed off early," she said. "Your recovery's ahead of schedule." Victor gave a faint nod, though the dull ache in his chest reminded him he wasn't quite whole yet. 3 nights in a hospital bed after a cardiac procedure, nights spent listening to machines hum, fluorescent lights flickering above, and not a single visit from his wife, Lena Whitmore. She had texted once, claiming hospitals made her anxious, said the smell of antiseptic turned her stomach. But what hurt wasn't the excuse, it was the silence, the absence, the empty hours where love should have shown up and didn't. Victor told himself not to overthink it. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she just didn't know how to deal. Still, somewhere beneath the gauze and stitches, something in him had already begun to detach. The cab ride home was quiet. The city outside moved like a blur, but Victor's thoughts were slower, heavy. He thought about the way sunlight hit their kitchen floor in the morning, about the smell of Lena's perfume lingering on throw pillows, about the comfort of their bed. He wondered if she'd be surprised to see him home early. Maybe she'd smile. Maybe she'd cry. As the car pulled into the driveway, that gentle fantasy cracked. Lena's car was already there, parked not straight, but haphazardly across the bricks like she'd rushed in and never looked back. That wasn't like her. She prided herself on appearances, on order. Victor stared at the car a second too long, a dull weight pressing against his sternum, one not caused by surgery. He paid the fare, stepped out, and lifted his overnight bag, moving toward the door. The house was still. Lights off downstairs, no music, no smell of dinner, only a dim, pulsing glow from upstairs. He didn't call out. He didn't announce his arrival. Something told him not to. Something deeper than suspicion, an instinct. He climbed the stairs, the creaking beneath his feet louder than usual, and stopped outside their bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. The light inside cast a warm but distorted hue. Victor pushed gently, almost hoping it would be empty. But it wasn't. Lena was there, and so was a man Victor had never seen. They were tangled together in the bed they had bought 5 years ago, the one she had once joked was too firm, the one they had chosen after testing half the showroom. Her laughter, light, breathless, cut through him sharper than any blade. The sheets were pulled halfway over them. His pillow had been tossed aside. The nightstand still held their wedding photo, tilted at an odd angle, as if watching the whole thing unfold in stunned silence. Victor didn't move. He didn't gasp. He didn't speak. The world had gone completely quiet. His breath was shallow. His eyes didn't blink. The pain wasn't explosive. It was hollow, a cavernous ache that started somewhere in his spine and echoed through his chest. They didn't see him. Not yet. Too lost in their moment, too sure he wouldn't be there. 10 seconds passed, maybe more. Time folded in on itself. Then Victor stepped back, slowly, carefully. No anger, no drama. He walked down the stairs with the same stillness he used to navigate minefields overseas. Back to the waiting cab, engine still idling. The driver glanced at him. "Everything okay?" Victor's voice was low, barely audible. "Drive." "Where to?" "Downtown," he said, and as the car pulled away from the home that no longer felt like his, Victor didn't look back. He closed his eyes and let the silence wrap around him, not the silence of peace, but of betrayal so deep, so sharp, that words would only weaken it. This wasn't grief. Not yet. This was the moment just before the storm, when everything is unbearably still. The city blurred past the window as the cab slid silently through traffic, but Victor Dalton's mind was sharper than it had been in days. The pain in his chest from the surgery was nothing compared to the quiet burn building inside him now. There was no fury, no trembling rage, just a deep, pulsing clarity. Something had snapped back into place when he saw Lena Whitmore with that stranger in their bed. The man she had become wasn't the woman he'd married. She wasn't worth another second of heartbreak. But that didn't mean she would walk away untouched. "Take me downtown," he told the driver again, and 20 minutes later, they pulled up in front of a modest but familiar brick building tucked between two high-rises. Victor stepped out slowly, overnight bag still slung over his shoulder, hospital bracelet barely cut from his wrist. He didn't bother fixing his hoodie or checking the dark circles under his eyes. None of it mattered now. Not his appearance, not his image, only the outcome. Julian Marks had been his friend for years, an old buddy from the days when Victor fixed computers on the side while transitioning out of the military. Julian had since become one of the sharpest attorneys in the city, and he owed Victor more than a few favors. When Victor walked into the office unannounced, Julian looked up from behind his desk, startled. "You're supposed to still be in the hospital." Victor closed the door gently behind him. "Plans changed." Julian motioned to the seat across from him. "What happened?" Victor sat down without a word, reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. He placed it on the table with care, like setting down a loaded weapon. "She's been cheating," he said flatly. "I saw them, in our bed, today." Julian blinked, his brow tightening. "Lena?" "With some professor," Victor added. "I didn't get his name. I didn't need to." His voice was calm, measured, too calm. The kind of calm that made men nervous. He tapped the folder once. "Everything you need is in there." Julian opened it slowly, flipping through page after page of bank statements, property deeds, signed trust documents, power of attorney forms, private account summaries, and a quiet trail of financial restructuring. "You already moved everything," Julian said, glancing up. "Months ago." Victor nodded once. "The house, the business, the savings, transferred, consolidated, locked. She still thinks she has access to all of it." Julian sat back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. "She has no idea you prepared for this." "She never bothered to notice," Victor said. "And now, she's going to find out what she never cared to understand." Julian kept scanning the file, his tone shifting from curiosity to respect. "You restructured the company into a trust last year. Made yourself the sole beneficiary. She didn't even update her power of attorney after the wedding?" "No, I made sure she didn't think she had to." Victor's eyes were like steel now. "She wanted the illusion of control. I gave it to her." "And now?" Julian asked. "Now I want the papers filed today. Divorce. With full documentation. Let her get served before she even figures out the bank account's frozen." "Do you want temporary restraining orders?" "Yes, and I want to flag the joint account. She's been siphoning money, some of which came from my VA disability benefits, that qualifies for federal review." "Jesus," Julian muttered. "You're going scorched earth." Victor stood up. "No, I'm not destroying anything. I'm preserving what's mine." He paused, then looked Julian in the eye. "She made her choice. I'm just making sure she lives with it." Julian picked up his phone. "Give me 2 hours." Victor nodded. "I'll be back. Keep everything confidential." He turned without another word, walked out of the office, and stepped into the afternoon sun like a man not recovering from surgery, but rising from a battlefield. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was the first move on a board Lena never realized she was playing. By the time the sun began to slip behind the skyline, the house Victor Dalton once called home had already begun its transformation, from a space of warmth and shared memories to a calculated fortress that no longer belonged to Lena Whitmore. The locksmith arrived within hours of his meeting with Julian Marks. Victor didn't wait. Every lock on every door was replaced. The garage opener was reprogrammed. The home security system, once installed with Lena's preferences in mind, was reset entirely. The passcode she had chosen, her birthday of course, was erased from the system. Victor called the alarm company himself and had her listed as unauthorized access. No notifications, no warnings, just silence, precision, one step at a time. He moved through the house with deliberate ease, removing the keys she had duplicated, collecting the spare sets, changing out the hidden lockbox codes. This wasn't an outburst. It was a transition, one she would never see coming. Next came the finances. The joint checking account, once a shared resource, was frozen within 10 minutes of his request. Victor moved the remaining $23,000 into a private account Lena had never known existed. He'd opened it months ago under a separate trust name, quietly redirecting dividend payouts and service income. The banker, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, barely blinked when Victor explained the need for immediate restriction of Lena's access. "She's been using the card like it's bottomless," he said calmly. "She hasn't checked the balance today, but she will." The banker nodded, printed out a confirmation form, and handed it to him with quiet respect. "You're not the first," she said softly, "but you might be the most prepared." "Not prepared," Victor replied, "just done pretending." After that, he made one more call to the luxury dealership where Lena's beloved SUV had been leased under Victor's name. She always boasted it was hers, loved to talk about the leather seats and backup cameras as if she paid for them herself. But Victor knew better. He had negotiated the buyback clause when they signed the lease. And now, with a single signature and a scan of his ID, the dealership agreed to send a team to collect the vehicle that same afternoon. No notice to her. No confrontation, just gone. By early evening, Victor stood across the street in the passenger seat of Julian's black SUV, sipping a coffee slowly as he watched the final act unfold. Lena walked up the driveway first, followed closely by Evan Carlisle, her smug affair partner. They looked relaxed, confident, maybe even happy. She reached into her purse, pulled out her key, and inserted it into the door. It didn't turn. She tried again. Nothing. A moment passed. Confusion crept across her face. Evan stepped forward, tried his own key, probably a spare she'd given him. Also useless. Lena knocked, then banged. Her voice rose. "Victor, open the door! This isn't funny!" Victor didn't move. Julian handed him the coffee. "You good?" he asked. Victor nodded once. In control. "Let her scream," he murmured. Evan's voice joined in now, louder, frustrated. "Yo man, come on, don't make this a thing, we're not here to fight." Victor took another sip. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look interested. He looked finished. Lena's knocking became pounding. Her tone shifted from anger to panic. Her card had just been declined at the gas station, she said. Evan's card too. She couldn't understand. "Victor, please." Victor set the empty coffee cup down in the console and turned to Julian. "Let's go." As the SUV pulled away from the curb, Victor looked back one last time. Lena had collapsed on the porch, shoulders shaking. Evan stood off to the side, face lit by the screen of his phone, probably trying to figure out where the car had gone. Victor didn't smile, he didn't wave, he didn't gloat, he simply watched. Then he turned forward, eyes clear, voice steady. Checkmate. There were no raised voices, no thrown objects, no final arguments, just quiet removal. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was reclamation. He wasn't the victim anymore. He was the one holding the board. The morning after the lockout, Victor Dalton sat on the patio of a quiet downtown hotel, watching the world move on without him. The sun rose clean and golden between the high-rise buildings, people passed with coffees in hand and earbuds in, all chasing routines. For the first time in days, he felt nothing. No sting, no ache, just a stillness that came when the anger was gone and only purpose remained. His phone buzzed once, then again, then again. 10 missed calls from Lena Whitmore. 5 from an unknown number. A voicemail. He didn't listen. He already knew what the voice would say. Confusion, excuses, maybe fake concern. None of it mattered now. Instead, Victor opened his laptop and logged into the secure client portal Julian Marks had set up for him. Everything was lined up. Divorce papers, filed. Petition for a temporary restraining order, filed, supported by video footage pulled directly from the home's security system. Yes, Victor had reviewed the recordings. She hadn't even bothered to close the blinds. The camera in the hallway caught it all. Her laughter, the bed shifting, the betrayal made real in digital timestamps. The footage would speak for itself in court, but it had already spoken loud enough to Victor. Next, he reviewed the documents for the civil suit. Lena had withdrawn thousands from their joint savings account over the last several months. Money Victor had quietly moved back and forth while preparing his financial exit. What made it worse, and legally actionable, was the fact that a portion of that money came directly from his military disability benefits, federal VA-protected funds. Lena had either ignored that detail or didn't care. Either way, it gave Victor the green light to file for fraud and potential felony-level misappropriation. If she returned the money, it would be handled civilly. If she didn't, it would become criminal. He didn't care which path it took. The outcome would be the same. She would lose. But that wasn't all. Victor clicked into another folder and opened the email draft he had been crafting since 3 a.m. It was addressed to the Title IX office and the Office of Academic Integrity at the local university where Lena worked part-time in administration and where Evan Carlisle, her affair partner, held a tenured faculty position. The message was concise, formal, and backed with documentation. Screenshots of Lena's calendar entries showing personal time taken during work hours, location data that placed her at Evan's office or faculty housing during those windows, and receipts, gas, food, and even a short-term rental payment, all charged to the joint account. The implication was clear: a faculty member engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a university staffer, both using school hours and resources. It wasn't just a scandal. It was policy violation territory. Victor attached the evidence in a zipped file and clicked send. Less than 2 hours later, he received a response. "Thank you for your report. This matter has been forwarded to the Office of Academic Integrity and Human Resources for immediate review." That was enough. He didn't need to see the fallout. He just needed to know the first domino had tipped. Later that day, Lena sent a text. "Please, can we just talk? Everything's gotten out of control. We didn't mean to hurt you like this." Victor almost laughed. They hadn't meant to hurt him. They just hadn't thought he would fight back. They'd expected quiet collapse. A man too stunned to retaliate. Instead, they got silence and strategy. They got a man who understood patience. A man who knew that real damage didn't come from shouting, it came from precision. Evan Carlisle would soon be facing an internal investigation. His name was already flagged in the financial trail Lena left behind, transfers from their joint account to Evan's Venmo, some labeled as "thank you" or "getaway weekend." Rookie mistakes. Traceable ones. Victor didn't need revenge. He needed truth. And the truth, when organized into affidavits, timestamps, and policy violations, spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. By nightfall, the storm was no longer inside him. It had moved outside, into courtrooms, into inboxes, into HR departments, and compliance offices. And Victor, he simply sat in silence, drinking black coffee, reading the final line of the university's follow-up email one more time. If confirmed, disciplinary action may include suspension or termination. That would do. The board was still moving, but the game was no longer in their hands. The Sunday afternoon air was heavy with the kind of suburban stillness that tried to appear serene but always felt staged. Victor Dalton pulled into the driveway of the Whitmore residence, meticulously trimmed hedges, porch decor for every season, and a mailbox that probably hadn't seen a late bill in 20 years. He stepped out of the car in a dark button-down and slacks, carrying nothing but a slim, charcoal folder tucked under his arm. No fanfare. No ceremony. Just purpose. The house belonged to Harold and Beatrice Whitmore, Lena's parents, people who had spent 12 years offering polite smiles dipped in condescension. Beatrice had once told Victor at Thanksgiving, with her wine glass hovering just above judgment, "You're not exactly the man we prayed for, but at least you pay the bills." The door opened before he could knock. Lena stood there in worn jeans and a t-shirt that didn't match her usual polished image. Her face paled the moment she saw him. "What are you doing here?" Victor's voice was calm, even. "I brought something for your parents." Beatrice appeared in the doorway behind her daughter like a ghost summoned by tension. Her eyes narrowed, and the familiar smirk formed. "Oh, the ghost returns." Victor didn't flinch. "May I come in?" Lena hesitated. Beatrice tilted her head. "It's fine. Let the man speak." They led him to the living room where Harold sat in his recliner, flipping half-heartedly through a golf magazine. Victor remained standing. 5 minutes, Lena muttered. "Less," he promised. He placed the folder on the glass coffee table, opened it slowly, and pulled out the first document. A printed spreadsheet detailing $38,207 in unauthorized withdrawals from the joint account he had once shared with Lena. The rows included timestamps, transaction notes, and one particular transfer labeled Weekend Cabin, sent directly to Evan Carlisle's Venmo. "This," Victor said, looking at Harold, "is what your daughter did with our savings." He set the next paper down. It was an email printout from the university's Office of Academic Integrity, confirming an open investigation into Evan and Lena for inappropriate workplace conduct. They used school property, school hours, and your daughter's position in admin to make this affair more convenient. He slid it toward Beatrice without breaking eye contact. It's already been escalated to HR. The third document was the one that drew the most silence, a copy of the new deed to the home Lena thought she still had rights to. Victor pointed to the notarized transfer of ownership, dated 3 weeks before she had been locked out. The house was legally sold to a private buyer, he said. Simon Keller, my cousin. He leased it back to me short-term, under a private agreement, which means every night Lena spent there after I changed the locks, she was trespassing. Beatrice's face twisted. You're bluffing. Victor didn't respond. He simply turned the page toward Harold, who now read with tightened brows and thin lips. Lena began to tremble, her arms folding tightly against her chest. You'll be hearing from my lawyer, she said quietly. Victor raised a brow. Good. Then you'll understand I'm also filing to recover the missing funds, and I've documented misuse of VA disability benefits. That's a federal felony. Then came the final document. He placed it on the table like a closing argument, one single sheet. A mortgage assistance cancellation notice. This is what I stopped paying last week, he said, addressing Beatrice and Harold directly. For the past 18 months, I've been quietly covering your monthly mortgage payments. I never said a word. Planned to surprise you with a payoff in December. He shrugged. But things change. Beatrice's smirk vanished. Harold dropped the magazine onto the floor. Lena's eyes welled with something that looked like regret. But Victor didn't care. For 12 years, he said, his voice low and razor-sharp, I showed up, I worked, I protected your daughter's reputation, I paid the bills, I defended her when no one else did, and in return, I came home from the hospital and found her with another man in my bed. He turned to Beatrice. And you encouraged it. You never thought I measured up, so now I'm finally living down to your expectations. He closed the folder and tucked it back under his arm. As he walked to the door, voices erupted behind him, Lena pleading, Beatrice sobbing, Harold shouting. Victor didn't turn around. He opened the door himself, stepped outside, and closed it behind him without a sound. It wasn't revenge, it was justice, served not with fury but with facts. Not with yelling, but with truth. He didn't need them to like him. He only needed them to understand that everything they once looked down on had now risen above them. The silence that followed was louder than any confrontation could ever be. Weeks passed, and Victor Dalton didn't say a word, not to Lena Whitmore, not to anyone in her world. He didn't need to. The consequences had already started unraveling, one thread at a time, pulling apart the illusion she had built around herself. It began with the eviction notice. Lena had ignored the warnings at first, assuming Victor's coldness was temporary and that the house was still hers by some twisted logic. But when 2 sheriff's deputies arrived in uniform, posted the order publicly on the front door, and gave her 24 hours to vacate, reality hit like a slap. Neighbors watched from behind blinds as she pleaded, cried, and ultimately packed her things in silence. Evan Carlisle wasn't there to help. He had his own disaster to manage. The university acted faster than anyone expected. The Title IX report Victor filed, with documentation of Lena and Evan's involvement during working hours and on school property, had triggered a full internal review. The emails, time logs, and payment receipts Victor had quietly collected were more than enough to prompt disciplinary action. Evan was suspended immediately. Within days, his tenure was rescinded. The board issued a statement citing violations of academic ethics. His pension, once locked in for retirement, was stripped. And when the screenshots surfaced, photos of Lena and Evan together during work hours, some sent from university servers, the faculty message boards lit up with shock. But the final blow didn't come from the university. It came from Rachel Carlisle. Evan's wife. She hadn't known. Not really. Not until she received a manila envelope in the mail, sent anonymously of course, with beach selfies, payment receipts, and one particularly cruel message from Lena's phone. He makes me feel alive again. Rachel filed for divorce the following week. As for Lena, the spiral continued. Her parents, Beatrice and Harold Whitmore, refused to answer her calls. The humiliation from Victor's visit still echoed through their social circles. Beatrice stopped attending her country club luncheons. Harold withdrew from his weekly golf group. Whispers followed them. Mortgage collectors, once held at bay by Victor's quiet payments, now called daily. Lena moved in with a former coworker, temporarily before settling for a one-bedroom apartment near a shopping plaza. And then came the job, the only one she could get, a retail position at a home goods store. The same kind of job she used to mock publicly. "That's what you do when you have no ambition," she once posted. Now she wore the uniform, scanned barcodes, smiled through gritted teeth. Still, she tried to rewrite the narrative. On social media, Lena cast herself as the victim. She posted vague quotes about emotional abuse, gaslighting, healing, shared blurry selfies with tearful captions. She claimed Victor had cut her off without compassion and used his influence to ruin her life. People, some friends, some strangers, sent supportive comments, heart emojis, encouragement. For a moment, she almost had them, until Victor replied. He didn't use his real name. He created a burner account. One comment, one question, posted beneath one of her emotional status updates. "Didn't you mock your disabled husband while he was in the hospital, sleeping with your affair partner in his bed? Curious if that's in your next post too." The comment gained traction fast. Dozens of likes, shares. People started asking questions. Friends unfollowed, some deleted her entirely. The carefully curated image Lena had clung to, glossy, broken, misunderstood, crumbled under the weight of undeniable truth. Victor never replied again. He didn't need to. He watched it all unfold from a distance, never once stepping forward to gloat. No press releases, no phone calls, no revenge fantasies played out in public, just silence. Purposeful, sharp, complete silence. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't even angry anymore. He was simply done. And Lena? She was finally alone. Not the kind of loneliness you feel after a fight. The kind that settles in when you realize you've burned every bridge, exhausted every lie, and now stand alone in the ashes of what you built. Victor didn't forgive her. He never said he would. But he didn't destroy her either. She did that all on her own. 1 year later, Victor Dalton woke to the quiet lapping of lake water against the wooden dock outside his cabin. The air was cool, the sky washed in early hues of soft gold and blue. Birds sang, the kind of gentle melody that came with places untouched by chaos. The cabin was modest, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a fireplace that crackled through the winter. It wasn't much, but it was his. Tucked on the edge of a small lake near the VA hospital, it offered everything he needed and nothing he didn't. He went fishing some mornings, not because he expected to catch anything, but because standing knee-deep in the stillness did something for his soul. Some afternoons he volunteered, helping fellow veterans navigate paperwork, housing applications, or just sitting with them while they talked about the weight they still carried. He understood that kind of weight better than most. Not the kind that comes from war, but from betrayal. With the help of Julian Marks, Victor had launched a nonprofit 6 months ago, a quiet but powerful initiative aimed at helping military families secure legal representation, temporary housing, and emergency funds. It was funded in part by donations, in part by his own resources, but primarily by one consistent deposit, $5,231.90, transferred like clockwork on the first of every month. Court-ordered restitution. Lena Whitmore's signature repayment for the money she took from their shared account, some of which included Victor's protected VA disability benefits. He never touched the money personally. Every cent went into the nonprofit. Not out of spite, but out of purpose. Something broken had to become something useful. He believed in that now. People sometimes asked if he missed her, if, in the quiet moments, he thought about what could have been. He always gave the same answer. "I don't miss her. I miss who I thought she was." He hadn't seen Lena since that day in her parents' living room. He had no idea where she was now. The restitution continued, but her voice, her image, her chaos, none of it followed him here. She had tried to reach out once, early on, through her attorney. Julian had handled it. Victor never responded. There was nothing left to say. He held no hatred. That surprised even him. For a long time, he'd imagined he would carry rage for years. That he'd replay the betrayal like a film on loop, unable to let it go. But standing on the dock one morning, mist curling off the lake, he realized something profound. Hatred is a chain. Forgiveness isn't always a gift you give the other person, it's the bolt cutter that frees you from their grip. Victor didn't forgive Lena in the traditional sense. He didn't excuse her. He didn't justify what she did. But he released her. He let her go, not with mercy, but with finality. There would be no return, no reunion, no second act. Some people destroy their chance, and the most powerful response is to keep walking. Inside the cabin, the nonprofit's latest report sat printed on the dining table. 5 families assisted this quarter. 1 veteran reunited with his kids after a bitter custody fight. Another received emergency shelter after eviction. Victor read through the names slowly, quietly proud. None of them would ever know the story behind the funding. They didn't need to. That wasn't the point. Later that day, he took a walk down the gravel trail behind the cabin, stopping at a small wooden bench that faced the water. The breeze was gentle. His heart was steady. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't looking backward. People often mistake silence for weakness. They assume peace means surrender, but Victor knew better. He had been the quietest man in the room, and he had won, not through revenge, but through clarity. Not through violence, but through truth. This wasn't revenge. This was closure. And closure, when earned, is the loudest silence of all. Some betrayals don't deserve confrontation, they deserve consequences. Victor Dalton's story reminds us that strength isn't always loud, and dignity isn't something others can strip away unless we let them. In silence, he reclaimed his life. In strategy, he protected his peace. And in walking away without looking back, he taught us this. Healing begins not when they apologize, but when we stop waiting for it. Closure isn't revenge, it's choosing yourself without needing their permission. So if you've ever been broken, remember this. You don't have to burn down their house. You just have to stop letting them live in yours. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.
After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind, or maybe it has brought back some old memories. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories, and they connect all of us. Everyone has their own unique journey in life, and we all try to understand the world in our own way. These kinds of moments remind us that we are all human, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, and always learning something new. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with your friends. Your thoughts and feedback are always valuable to us, as they motivate us to create even better content. Every story has its own unique angle, and our goal is to understand everyone's perspective and make our content diverse and relatable. Stories like these help us realize that life's journey is different for everyone, and by hearing other stories, we learn something new. You can also share your own stories with us. Your experiences are valuable to us as well, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave your feedback. We aim to create content that brightens your mind and gives you new ideas every time. If you've already seen this video before, your feedback is still important. With every piece of feedback, we can improve our content and bring a new perspective to our viewers. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious. **